Hello everyone and welcome to Module 4 of this Business Design Business Model Innovation course. And we've covered a lot of ground now, so one of the things we're going to do is really talk about how we can apply it and what are the essential things that we need to do in terms of innovating a business model. One of the things that you find in every industry, and often organisations overlook it, is there's quite often dominant business models within the industry. So if you can look at things like car manufacturers, for instance, they all have similar infrastructures. And when we look at other industries, maybe they market themselves in a similar way or they operate similarly. And so what we want to do is understand what the dominant business model is. Because if we're going to disrupt a market, we need to have a base point, a benchmark for then how we move or change that. And quite often what happens in organisations is that they start to develop new business models and new ideas, which is great. But in terms of the context of the market or a customer segment, unless you understand the current business models, it's very hard to then think about how you are going to innovate and why you're innovating. And don't forget, there's 95% failure rate of startups currently. And that's been going on for a long time. And one of the reasons for that is clearly there are problems in the innovation process. There's people still not identifying what the customer needs are, or not identifying really how the business model truly differentiates itself from its competitors. So one of the things we want to do is really to start to understand how we can map a business model for a dominant industry, for a customer segment, and then use that to create new business models. And we've already seen that we can use business model patterns to help us in terms of change things. But unless we have a start point, a benchmark, it's very hard to move forward. So how do you do this? Every industry has a common set of business models until it's disrupted. And often then it's too late for a lot of companies. They're on the slide, they're playing catch up, and that's why disruption often happens. So the first step really is decide if your current business model is common or different to others in the marketplace. Now, clearly, we're going to focus on different customer segments, so you need to identify who is the customer segments that we're talking about initially. But quite often, if you've got an existing business, that's quite easy to do. You've already got a set of customers, and you can build out a lot of information or gather a lot of information about them. So two things we're going to do. First of all, how do we gather data? Well, competitors. A lot of industries already, or organisations already know who their key competitors are. So you've already got lots of information that you can draw upon. There are other things to take into account though. What are the trends that are happening in the marketplace? Because don't forget that business models aren't strategy. What they are is really a way of designing based on being informed about what's already changing in an industry. And change is a key driver for how organisations innovate. The other thing that we need to understand is what are the technology trends? Because technologies often give rise to disruptive business models. And there will be lots of information already existing in the market that you can look at. There are consultancies, the big five, organisations like McKinsey, Deloitte, Boston Consulting Group, that will obviously have quite a lot of information about particular industries and the trends within them. And quite often their reports are open to the public. Customer needs, what's changing, what's affecting customers, what are they having to think about, what's keeping the executive team up at night. Those form the basis for how they themselves will change their business or need to. And of course you've got disruptive startups who are already in place, starting to eat away at market share for various organisations. So these sets of information are really useful when you come to look at how you map an existing business model. This is a simple framework. It's not elaborate, but once you've got your data, you want to distill it down into some key points. Not everything will be relevant, And so what you want to draw out to be able to use in a team when you're mapping existing business models is to be able to make it easy for everyone to have access to that information. So the way to work this is to look at all those different trends and then enter into each of these boxes exactly the key points that you've identified through your research. So in other words, competitors. What are the things that competitors are doing differently? How are they affecting things? What technology trends are affecting or could be used that are going to affect the market? Macro trends. What are the big high-level trends in terms of social, political, environmental that are affecting the industry or market? And customer needs. How are your customers changing? What are they starting to do differently? Then you've got disruptive startups. What are the key ways that they are changing the business model? And the good thing is, if you're doing the disruptive startups, what you want to do is put headers in this section as to what areas of the business model canvas they are particularly changing. Is it the pricing model? Is it the revenue model? Is it the marketing? Is it the relationships? Are they aiming at or trying to open up a new market? Are they doing or creating value in a different way? So put headers in those sections and then identify really some of the key points that you've identified. And what's the disruptive capabilities? Capabilities are those things where, basically it's about things like activities and resources, but what are they doing differently? Do they have IP? Do they have, what's the capabilities that are coming into play in the market? So that's more of a higher level overview of some of the capabilities that companies are starting to develop. So once we've got that, we can start to really look at and map each part of the business model canvas for the dominant business model. And what you want to do based on that previous canvas is start to look at what's common. What are initially the things that haven't changed? What's actually still being used? Are they, even though there might be some new key resources, is everybody still doing the same marketing process? Are they still going through resellers, or are they still going direct, or are they still having relationships through account managers? And then start to put in what they're doing differently. And so by color coding these, for instance, you can start to look at what's not been changed and what is changing. And then you need to highlight those big threatening changes within each block. What do you think, and prioritize them? Use something like a red color. Which of these things that are changing in each of these boxes are going to cause the biggest disruption? Once you've done that, you will have a very powerful tool from which to innovate. More importantly, it will give a big picture as to how you can then innovate yourself based on various aspects. And this is a way of doing two things. It's not only about innovating a new business model, it's also about developing defensive strategies. Now, when we work in teams, I want to just touch base as to a few tips, I guess, as to how you work in teams. Obviously, we're all used to working in workshops, but this is just a design thinking approach. When we're looking at problems, particularly in terms of developing new business models, what we want to do is use divergent thinking in the initial stages. We want to identify the problem space that we have within the business model and how we can think about the different problems customers are facing, and then translate those into new opportunities. Lateral thinking is a problem-solving technique for completely new options. So this is taking analogies, coming up with brand new ideas, basically. Then we have analogies where we can actually start to use things where we identify things that work in other industries. So this is almost like the business model patterns. Where can we apply something that's used in a different industry or or different market into how we solve a problem or a new business. And a metaphor is just a way really for us to understand things. So let me just give you an example, for instance. If I was to say the initial problem for taxis was the inability to connect drivers easily through an app so that they could have a seamless experience in booking a ride. Now, if I take the sailing industry, there's lots of boat owners who move around, and so we could do a very quick comparison where there's an existing need for people that want to travel using yachts, and maybe there's an app that could be used to book boats for short trips. So we can use different ways of thinking. In terms of divergent thinking, when you're in the initial stages of business model innovation, thinking about new ideas, try and use as many ideas as you can. Don't dismiss them. Don't start getting judgmental at this stage. Divergent thinking is all about opening up, helping others to come up with ideas rather than close them down thinking it's not a good idea. This helps people because quite often in teams what you find, if somebody is a naysayer or dismisses an idea, that person might not then feel as good about coming up with other ideas. So early stages, support each other, make sure there's enthusiasm, push out as many ideas as you can. It's easier to reduce those ideas later. That improves team collaboration. If there are particular problems where there are limited number of ideas, put that problem to one side and try and tackle it with a more dedicated amount of time. So in terms of teams, we want to make sure that we get the best ideas out all the time. Encourage wild ideas. Don't forget, the best innovators have come up with the most sometimes outrageous ideas. People like Tesla, they've gone against the industries. If you take SpaceX, NASA actually said to Elon Musk, it can't be done. You can't build a reusable rocket. We thought about it, we've looked at it, you're not going to be able to do it because we couldn't. So he was a visionary, but he was able to take that idea and work it through to a stage where it's now a reality. So the key here is defer judgment, encourage big ideas, build on each other's ideas. If somebody's got one idea and they're not sure about it, encourage them. Help them gain the confidence to be more creative. Stay focused on the topic, make sure that you use your time well, and also make sure people don't talk over each other. If somebody's trying to express an idea, let them express it fully before you actually enter into setting off another conversation. One thing I'm a very powerful believer in is being visual. So use post-its, use visual aids like canvases, and initially go for a quantity of ideas. Convergent thinking works differently, and the mind finds it very hard to do both. And the problem we have quite often is that as people, we solve problems in businesses in our day-to-day life. And so we quickly get into the idea of taking in, generating ideas, but we then quickly move into solutions. What we want to do at this stage with convergent thinking is defer solutions and evaluate things, which is slightly different. What we're looking to do is actually filter and sort the data and ideas that we've generated and make sure we can prioritize them. And we need to have some sort of criteria. So it's no good one person saying, I don't like that. That's not fair on somebody's idea. So whatever idea you're working on, or whatever section or grouping of ideas, see if you can come up with some sort of scale. See if there's some sort of axis you can develop that helps you evaluate it. The level of risk. the level of investment. There are different ways of selecting ideas. Maybe the technology is not ready yet. So have a technology scale, short-term, long-term. Use scales, use methods to be able to prioritise ideas. And then you can hopefully get more group consensus. Set aside time to agree upon criteria. Rather than just do it on the day, do the preparation first. Think about what the problem is you're going to tackle, which business models, which ways you're going to tackle it, how you can evaluate each section. That way you'll be able to find the best solutions. And if new knowledge is needed, deferred selections. So in other words, rather than make judgments on criteria, if you don't have the right information to hand, because you need to look at how that trend is affecting the market, whether it's short-term, long-term, defer the selection rather than make a final decision. Teams help by having diversity. That means not everybody's going to have the same idea or same way of thinking. So it's really important to show respect for each other's idea. I know that's obvious, but sometimes you need to have a facilitator to make sure that everybody has a fair say. Come up with the idea and mandate that there is no such thing as a bad idea. Sometimes it's just an idea and it might be relevant in the future. And so one of the things we need to do is just stop ourselves from doing the judgmental thing. Ideas do not have owners. They're ideas in their own right, so don't link personalities with ideas. No single decision maker. It's good to have a facilitator. It's good to have people that can then vote on things. Try and get consensus. And leaders, if they are present in innovation team, in workshops, can overly influence a decision. So if leaders enter into a facilitation workshop, their position and role should really be about encouraging the others, and often speaking last, they don't influence any decision based on their own thoughts. Ideas, and particularly business models, should be used as a library. With the amount of time and effort put in to develop different business models, it's worth developing a library. And that can be done digitally, so that you have a library that can be tagged, and so people don't repeat themselves, or they have a stock of ideas that they can then reuse. And sometimes things change in a market. Sometimes technologies affect things. And therefore, if you have a library, you've already got a base point from which to start. So key points based on this short module. Collect market information, understand the trends, understand the customer, use something like a customer profile template, which we've shown earlier in these modules. Map each part of the business. Ensure that you arrive at a full picture of the dominant business model, even your own. Critically analyse how startups are already changing the dominant business model in your industry. And don't forget, you can rethink how the business model can be changed using business model patterns. In terms of innovation teams, include a diverse range of people across the organisation. That helps bring in new possibilities, new ways of thinking, and new skills. Some people might have knowledge that's invaluable when you come to develop a new business model. Don't forget, business model innovation takes time. If you rush the process, you increase the risk of failure. We are eventually, if we're starting a business, going to looking for investment and time. You want the highest success rates possible. You want to be able to have assurance that you've done the right things, come up with the right business model. If you do it in a vacuum, without information about the market, without information about your own business model, then you are increasing the risk of failure. and collect and keep a library of existing ideas and business models.